I think you're right about all kinds of disciplines. There are some, we know these freaks that they don't do any rudimentary stuff, and somehow they figure it out and they become superstars. But I do think if you're gonna go at it right, you want to learn the basics and get going. Let's talk about your dad before we get into your storied career, man. Your dad was a drummer in Las Vegas, a percussionist maybe.
Well,
Percussionist?
both.
In Las Vegas during the heyday, like the Rat Pack years.
Yes.
What, did he come home and tell you guys stories at dinner? How did that work out?
Oh, absolutely. Well, before that, my dad was the house drummer at Hotel Nacional in Cuba, in Havana, at the Casino Parisien, where I saw a photo a few years ago of him with a suit, double bass drum on the drums, and the band was looking good, black and white picture in the 1950s. And then there was a black lady singing, and I was going, Dad, who was that? And he goes, that was Josephine Baker. And I go, Dad, you play with Josephine Baker? He goes, yeah, she came to Cuba for a 2-week engagement and stayed for 2 years. So if you actually go back and see the movie Josephine Baker, when the time that she was in Cuba, my dad was actually drumming for her at the Hotel Nacional.
And Havana was a hot spot. So imagine if you were the premier band in Havana, you were meeting lots of Americans, maybe people from other countries.
Oh, yes. All the acts from United States played Havana in all the hotels. So when the revolution happened, you know, it actually, a lot of people don't understand that it was not necessarily pro and con. It's basically Fidel Castro, new government, comes in and closes the casinos. So basically your job is gone. So my dad, 90 minutes is like Miami and New York City. So my dad used to work there a lot. So the minute that happened, my dad said, we're going to New York, thinking that we will return to Cuba, but we never did because the situation got worse.
Yeah.
My dad remarried my stepmom from Puerto Rico, and then we moved to Puerto Rico for like 11 years, something like that, until 1970 that we moved to Las Vegas. And my dad, what my dad did in Cuba, he did in Puerto Rico at Hotel San Juan for The Temptations, Paul Anka, Liza Minnelli. I used to see all those shows on the side, you know, when I was a kid. And then we moved to Las Vegas, and obviously I was already 12 years old, 12, 13 years old. So by that time, I used to go with him to the hotels, and it was like Trini Lopez, Juliet Prowse, all the performers in the hotels in Las Vegas.
You've yourself have toured with an amazing string of professionals. I don't know, we were talking the other day, it's you by your own admission, it's part talent and part personality. You're just easy to get along with, people love you, and you're really good at what you do.
Yes, I mean, you know, I don't want to, that might sound a little weird, but I learned really quickly as I was young that there was a lot of retired, you know, big band musicians, famous musicians in Las Vegas, like Carl Fontana, Montgomery, which was the bass player that started the Fender bass, Wes Montgomery's brother. If you didn't know anything about bass, hanging out with Montgomery was like amazing. So, you know, it always rubbed like, man, if Montgomery was a drummer and I didn't even know drums, I would like to hang out with this guy because the energy, the smile and all that, you just feel good. So if you're a great musician and you are aiding the cause that you have, you know, you have to have the whole thing, because when the show is over, you're there for 21 hours, touring on the bus. So you got to be a team player. You got to get along with others.
Yeah. Back to our dads again. My dad used to say that his job was to help other people feel good about themselves.
Absolutely.
I think that's what musicians do.
You know what? I agree 100% with your dad, because it's unbelievable that I have different students. They all have a different purpose. Some students want to play for themselves. They don't want to please anybody else. They want to please themselves. They want to play at home. They want to have good technique. They want to play tunes for therapy. Some of them want to play in church. Some of them just want to jam with their families or play. But the minute you decide that you're going to go into the music business and play drums and make music with your drums for other people and get hired, now you're a businessman. So now you have a clients, and once you decide, I play drums, and when a client comes in, it's not about me, it's about you. What is it that you want? What is your vision? What do you foresee? What's your purpose? And my job is not to actually push my agenda or, man, I have this fast technique, I want to use your music. No, it's basically whatever your music needs, I'm here for you. Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's complicated, sometimes it's challenging for me, and sometimes it's very simple, but it doesn't matter. Are they happy? That's the question.
There have been a lot of movies about famous session players, going all the way back to what was the name of the guys that worked with Hal Blaine and those guys in Glen Campbell?
The Wrecking Crew.
Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, Phil Spector.
And now I'm hearing a lot about the Section, because Leland Sklar and these guys are kind of getting to end of life. It was Sklar, Kunkel on drums.
Yes, that was when Jackson Browne, David Lindley, Danny Korshmar. They not only play with Jackson Browne, but they play like Linda Ronstadt, Carly Simon,
James Taylor.
A bunch of sessions.
Yeah, and Toto was a generation of the Toto guy.
That's another rhythm section that was in the studios. That were a younger rhythm section, and they did Boss Skaggs, all the records of Boss Skaggs, and they did a lot of other sessions. And then they form a band that happened to be named Toto. This
is fascinating to me as not only as a former musician, but just trying to understand the music business, because we only see what, is shown to us, just like any other industry. But there's a whole backstage scenario that I wanted to ask you about, because you're really connected to it, even though you've been with Chicago for many, many years now, first as a percussionist and now as a drummer.
Yes.
There's like this connective tissue between all these cats, and this was way before the cell phone. How did you keep track of all your relationships and phone numbers? And it's got to be like an impossible task with all the players coming back and forth all the time.
Well, that's a great question, because through the eras, it was very different. When I was a kid, my dad was very busy because you didn't have technology. So any kind of music, you had to play it humanly. So my dad was busy all day long in Puerto Rico doing jingles, TV shows, recording sessions, and then coming home, eating dinner, and going to the hotels to play an 8 o'clock show and a 12 o'clock cocktail show, then come back at 3 in the morning, start back again the next day. So everything was music. There was no computer, no demo, no garage band, no loops. So basically, for a party at Christmas, the street was closed and all the musicians had to play. You play humanly. You got together a lot more humanly to make music, to rehearse, to jam. There was jam sessions. So now what happens is, like, time goes by. It was like that. Now in the 80s, the Lindrum machine comes in, and guitar players and bass player and keyboard player now have a drummer that is not human. So they put a beat, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, boom. So now where's the drummer? So now they started to ask the drummers to come and imitate this demo that they have created on the drum. So we had to get not only into the electronics, but actually get better to imitate drum machine patterns.
Wow.
And then loops started to happen. And then now, like calls, for example, for session in the 80s, they used to have a thing, I forgot the name, but it was a calling service. So anybody that needed musicians for a movie, contractors, whatever, they will call this calling service, and then they will call you. I have a session at Paramount at 8 in the morning next Friday. Can you make it? And I will say, yes, I'll be there. And then they will call you back. So basically, there's a middle person. So the studios, they call the service, they get the musicians. All that disappeared. And then there was cartage in LA. Like Hal Blaine had 4 or 5 different drum sets, so he will finish a session with his drum set and then run to another studio, which cartage will set up another drum set. So I had in LA 3 or 4 different drum sets, different percussion, different snare drums. And depending on what they wanted, chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, okay, take that one to the studio. And over here, they want something else. So then that will keep you busy. But now that whole cartage disappeared, started things started disappearing, and now I remember the last was the beeper. So now they don't need the service anymore. They don't need the ladies. They want you. Then you get the beeper. You get a number. You don't know who it is. You call. Okay, I need you for a recording or a gig or a concert. Okay, I can do it. And then came the cell phones, the big one, smaller, the flip phone. So now you start, technology changed in our instrument and changed in communications. So now I was telling my wife the other day, like right now we're trying to get that email of the questions.
Yeah.
I have people that message me in Facebook, private message me in Instagram, private message me in Twitter. There's another thing called LinkedIn, but I actually not even in it anymore because I can't keep up. I keep up. And then I have two emails and text. So sometimes I don't know where is the message. It's just like here or there.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
That's what I'm getting at. It's not like having one boss and you go to work every day. Musicians not only had to cobble together all of these assignments to create a yearly revenue, but they had to keep track of all these people and stay plugged in, because if you stopped being plugged in, you would stop getting calls. So it was really important that you're a professional networker in addition to being a really good drummer, for example.